I'd like to introduce, many of you probably already know Morag, Morag Gamble from Crystal Waters. Morag's a passionate permaculture grower or advocate and trainer, teacher, who has a wonderful display garden, runs workshops and all sorts, don't you? And she's got some wonderful plants here for you to see. She can tell you where you can probably buy them, not so much here unfortunately, but we work on next year and try and get more of these style of plants available for sale, because they're generally not all that common in nurseries and you have to know where to find them. So I look forward to hearing more. Enjoy your talk, and we'll probably have our no-dig garden at 11 o'clock up in the grandstand area if anyone wants to stay on for that. Kath Manuel will be telling you how to create your own no-dig garden. I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Barbara. Can you all hear me? Is that okay? Is it working? I can actually hear it from where I am. It's not working. No, here we go. Is that a bit better? Great, fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. And it's absolutely fantastic to be in the middle of this fabulous garden here. And I hope most of you were part of Costa's ramble through the garden then, because what he was talking about, I resonate with so well. My permaculture training has been in community gardens. I was involved in helping to set up the Northern Street City Farm, and then I've worked with communities around the world actually helping to set up community gardens as well. And the whole idea of having food in public places where people can just harvest what they want, to share the food, to share the knowledge. I think I went to landscape architecture school, and surprisingly, I don't think I actually touched a plant in landscape architecture school. We kind of studied them, and I knew about distances and sketching and nice writing, but I actually didn't touch any plants, particularly edible ones, surprisingly. It wasn't until I started going out as part of community gardens and going to various villages and actually sitting beside people who knew what they were talking about that my real education about permaculture began. And I think being part of verge gardens, being part of community gardens are just absolutely critical in building our knowledge and building community. And the ripple effects, as Costa was saying, are absolutely enormous. It's not just about the food or the flowers or the garden right there. It's about what it does to us inside. It's what it does to our connection to other people and to place. I noticed when I was involved in the Northern Street City Farm how all of a sudden, because people started to connect with a certain plot of land, they started to think further afield. So they started to restore the riverscape. They started to think about the whole catchment. They started to explore what was happening in all the community groups around. And so I think it shifts the whole lot. It's a very small thing to begin with, but it's a platform for really positive change. So but what I brought in today, I was out frolicking with the birds this morning in my garden up at Crystal Waters. And I brought in a lot of the plants, which I call my incredible edibles, because these are the sorts of plants that you can put into something like a verge garden or a community garden or my own garden, and you could literally walk away from them for a very long time and come back and they will still be producing abundantly. They are the sorts of plants that just keep on going and going. Really, when you start to get a garden full of these sorts of things, rather than being, struggling to get things growing and, maintaining them all, your role as a gardener becomes abundance manager. There is so much that starts to come from these plants. It's absolutely incredible. In my garden alone, I have an acre at Crystal Waters, but I don't do an intensive garden on that side. It's really a similar level to a standard suburban garden. I've done that on purpose so that it's an example that people can come in and they can see and go, oh yeah, I get how this works. I can see how you can create such an abundance in a small space. So what I've tried to do is to create the skeleton of my garden, the structure, the backbone of my garden being all of these plants, the perennials, the self-seeding, the super hardy, the super abundant. I think I probably spend about 5 minutes a day maximum, with a blitz every now and then doing gardening. I don't do any active pest management. I've created a diverse garden so that essentially I attract in all the beneficials, all the little birds, all the little insects, all the insectivorous things that come in and peck things off, and they look after us. Sitting in the middle of the garden the other day watching a little grey shrike thrush, I think that's what it's called, was sitting on my kale pecking off all the little pests. And it was just wonderful. And I also have things like this This is perennial basil, and I grow this in my garden, tuck it in around underneath all my different fruit trees, because it's one of those things that always has flowers on it. Whereas when you're doing normal basil, sweet basil for your pesto, you're constantly snipping off the flowers to make sure you get more leaf. Well, this one I grow particularly to have the flowers so that it's a buzz. My little daughter, when she was 4, called it the bee bush instead, because whenever you walk past it, it always is just buzzing. But what I've also noticed, because I scatter them through the garden, there's this connected pathway for all the little birds, the insectivorous birds that get threatened by the other predatory birds above. They can hide away in here and they jump out and they peck out stuff and they hide back in there. So they provide a really valuable role in the garden. And not only that, this is another name for this is Tulsi. And as you may well know, Tulsi is a fabulous medicinal tea. So many of these plants, they're not only edible, but they're medicinal. They're great as forage plants. They're great compost plants. I use them as mulch plants. They're this multifunctional abundance that you can create. So my aim is to try and really not water very much in my garden, to do no weeding, to have an abundance of food that I can be giving away, not only food but cuttings. I think in the last year or so I've given away over 10,000 cuttings out of my garden alone. And the thing about it is, the more that I snip and trim, the healthier the garden looks, and then the more there's plants going out in and around. So whatever I have up here today that is snippable or clippable, you're very welcome to come up and grab it at the end. I have things like some turmeric, comfrey, society garlic, yacon, Brazilian spinach, and also some Tulsi too. And it's such an easy thing to do. I just walk past it. If I need to fill a gap somewhere, I'm just making a bit of a mess of that one, I just snap it off, grab my trusty garden fork, make a little hole, stick it in, and push it down, and off I walk. And that's as simple as it gets. Same with things like the perennial Welsh onion. So this is one of my trusty plants. Now, this one, it got a bit bent on the way here, but I've had this plant, this particular plant, growing for over 20 years. When I first started at Northey Street, getting the gardens going, I had a little bucket on my share house veranda in New Farm, and I had this growing there. And it just keeps throwing out new shoots, and I keep spreading it out. I give some to friends, and so it's moved with me everywhere I've gone. I've been to Crystal Waters now for 18 years, and it's been in my garden. It moves around different places, but it's still going. And that's the idea, that mostly what I'm trying to do is to create plants that have really deep root systems, so that they become, they are able to actually suck up all those nutrients, all that moisture deep down. They're not so reliant upon me for continuing to give them all of that. So it's a process of perennialization. So I typically don't dig up a lovely big one like this, but I thought I would today to show you. And when I go home, I will plant it back in the ground, and it will then next year have so many more shoots coming up which I can share around and harvest myself. So in order to eat it though, I only ever use the tops. So this is my onion alternative. So I just chop this up, and that goes into my soups, into my omelettes, into my salads, into everything basically. So that's my onion alternative, the perennial Welsh onion. And then this one here is my garlic alternative. Now I've noticed as I was walking through the gardens here that many of these plants are actually growing in and around the garden. So go and have a look at how they look, not thrust out of the ground, but actually growing beautifully. So this is society garlic actually, and I call this one of my happy plants, because it doesn't matter what kind of day it's been, it's always sitting up there beautifully tall, nice, because it's got this strappy leaf nature. It always stands up beautifully tall. And then it also has those lovely purple mauve flowers on the top. Now they're also edible too, and surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, that has more garlic flavour in the top than actually the leaves. So I harvest those, use those as this is my garlic, this is my onion, and then, I didn't bring it today. I don't know if there's even any in the garden. The edible canna. The edible canna is one of my favourite plants because of its role in my permaculture garden and how many different roles it does have. It grows, it has luscious big leaves like this, even bigger, which I use as compost and the chop and drop mulch. But the base of it, it grows these beautiful big tubers that you just snap off, and that's my potato alternative. And I haven't had to do anything with that at all. So I have onion, garlic, potatoes that that are just absolutely perennial. Now, another interesting one here is yacon, and there's a few growing around in here, and I know that maybe next door is it, or next door has it, and also there's some yacon fruit down at Robin Clayfield's store. Now, this plant here is it's just coming into being ready to harvest now. So this is what's happening underground. This is just a little one. Many of them have about 20 kilos of fruit all the way around like this. And at the top, it's had these lovely big luscious leaves. And a few months ago, it started to get yellow flowers, and that I knew that these were starting to be ready. And I can actually burrow down underneath. So yacon is also known as Peruvian ground apple. You can eat it raw. You can grate it into salads. You can chop it up and use it in soups or stir fries. It's absolutely versatile in the way that you use it. Or you can just pick it out of the ground, peel it and start munching away at it. So it's different from the sweet potatoes and the other sorts of root crops that you have. So I keep these sorts of plants. They're larger plants. They're not in the middle of my little vegetable garden, but they're tucked in amongst, I have a whole series of dwarf citrus trees in and around the edge of my vegetable garden, so they're not shading or taking up too much space. And tucked in amongst those, I have things like the yacon, also things like taro and cassava. And again, all of these plants require pretty much no effort or maintenance from you, and they're pretty much pest resistant too. So at the moment, every one of these that I gently prise up out of the ground will have just kilos and kilos of fruit on. Another one that's really getting ready now is the turmeric. And I don't know, in this climate here, you can't but not have success with turmeric. I don't know, how many of you grow turmeric? Yes, exactly. All you need to do is grab a section of that, plonk it in the ground, and before you know it, you're going to have a massive great clump of turmeric growing. Now, how many of you eat turmeric every day? It's just such a fantastic thing to build your immune system. So again, it's one of those things that I fossick around underneath. I kind of bandicoot a lot and forage a lot in my garden, or send my kids out to see what they can find with a basket, and they'll bring back a range of things. Actually, my kids probably know my garden, particularly the fruits, better than I do. They know which particular mandarin is ready right now, and which orange is the best one that's for the season. So, and these are actually some of the ones that we have in the garden. We've got lemonades, and 4 different sorts of mandarins spread across the season. We've got grapefruits and about 4 different sorts of oranges, all dwarf varieties. And I was actually really inspired at the Yandina Community Gardens Open Day recently. Jerry Colby-Williams came and he was talking about how he had one large lime tree. It was about the size of a double bed. He was saying that it had so much lime on it that he harvested that and made 900 jars of jam. Someone asked me, I wrote this up on my blog, and someone said, well, where did you get all those jars from? It's a good question. I've been saving mine and gathering them from all the community, and I still probably only got 200. So he bought them right there, thank you. So, but the thing about it, that's amazing in itself. And they said when he sells those jars of jam, it's actually enough to pay for about 6 weeks of his mortgage. I mean, isn't that incredible that from one tree, a simple act of preserving or utilising the abundance that's fully there in your garden, you can actually create so much. I've spent a lot of echoing there. Am I standing too close to a... Yeah, that's okay. I've tried to set up my garden and my home system at Crystal Waters in a way that I've got no mortgage. So I've just built sort of a couple of tiny house modules and then connected them all together over the years, and it's fabulous because what it means is I can work part-time and I can homeschool kids in the midst of a permaculture garden and spend my time making and teaching and growing and helping to set up community gardens. The latest one I'm working with is trying to get one started at the University of the Sunshine Coast, which is really exciting because there's a possibility of getting the links with all the different faculties. So the engineering students are coming out and looking at water design, and the nutrition students are coming out and actually looking at real food and learning how to make food from the garden and what that can do for community development and international development. There was a guy from Papua New Guinea as an international student, and he was coming out looking at how to set up a community garden and what sort of things he could do so he can take that back to the villages in Papua New Guinea. So I think community gardens just have an absolute potential And why I love these plants too for verge gardens and community gardens is that these ones, I think, are essential for building up confidence and having a structure in the garden, even if there's no other annuals and anything else growing. So you can have a few really great little simple fruit trees that are not going to get fruit fly blown, and you can have a whole amazing array of different plants. Oh, I was going to mention too, these, who had those amazing winds the other day? Was that about a week ago? How many of you lost lots of fruit off your trees? My lime tree was just laden and my orange tree, and it just all fell to the ground. And so we've been out there gathering bucket loads, and we stood there. We put out a few at the front gate and tried to give them away, and then we still had lots left, and I didn't want them to go to waste. So my kids there, my older two, 10 and 8, they started up a little jam making production at home, and sold them at the local Crystal Waters market on the first weekend of the month. And I think, so these kids, 10 and 8, made about $150 out of that market. I thought, that's pretty good pocket money, so they're stashing that way. We're hoping to go on a bit of a world schooling journey to explore some permaculture places and other around the world. But another thing my little lad has decided to start doing too is to create worm towers. How many of you got worm towers? Have you ever seen these things? This is a simple piece of pipe from the hardware, from the plumbing store. And so he's drilled in all these little holes. You bury it into the ground up to here so that no little insects can get in. You upturn a pot on the top and maybe a few holes just for aeration. Now inside that, you can put about 100 grams of composting worms in a bed of cocoa peat or compost. And then you just keep feeding it. So all of the food scraps and waste from the garden can just go straight into here, and then it just goes straight into your garden. So it simplifies composting incredibly, and I think in order to have a really abundant community garden and a really abundant edible garden in your own place is focusing on the soil. So the soil for me is the number one thing, and I don't think of it as this collection of elements that we need to kind of get right. Essentially what I'm thinking when I think soil is life. It's this ecological system that exists underneath us everywhere. And the more that we focus on cultivating this abundant life underneath, the more it will support healthy plant growth. Plants that don't need as much watering from us, don't need as much pest management, they're much healthier and also much more nutrient dense is what I'm trying to say. But the other thing that they do is when the soil is really alive and really ready like that, as soon as your plants start to self-seed, the soil kind of receives them. My soil is my best seed bank. And it's just full of seeds waiting for the time when the temperature is right and when the moisture is right to come out. Now, some of the things, one of the things that I love, I've got a few different parts of it here, is my mustard spinach. Who grows mustard spinach? It is just, in about 4 weeks, I got leaves about this big or even bigger. It's just, it's like a monster in the garden, and it fills up beautiful empty spaces so rapidly. There's this one, there's also like a little crinkly leaf one, if I can find it in a minute, and also a deep red one, and that one I love. It's like wasabi. If I can find my little collection of plants here. Next to my camp. Thank you so much. I knew I put it somewhere. Oh, look, I'm right. I'll just make a lovely mess up here all by myself. So this is the red mustard spinach here, and it packs a punch, and it too self-seeds through my garden. And this is just a baby one. They get really big. Now, I just watch for when those come up, and I know it's time to put in a whole lot of other things of the similar nature. And here's the frilly-leafed mustard spinach. Now, the thing I noticed about these ones too, if you're having an issue with things like possums or other, they don't eat this stuff. I had an issue with wallabies and kangaroos coming through when I was first getting my garden going. So I had this strategy, okay, if I build a fence of mustard spinach-like plants, and then inside of that I'll tuck in all the things that are a little bit more palatable, then I'll probably get some more. And it worked, it absolutely worked. But what it's done is it's actually created this beautiful selection of plants that just keep going on and on in my garden. If I don't want them in a particular spot, I just prize them out and feed them to the chooks or the guinea pigs or the worm farm or the compost system, or gently move them with some soil into a place that I do want them. But what I wanted to say about this self-seeding plant is that not only do you have the leaf, which is great in just about everything raw and cooked, you also have the lovely seeding stalk. Now, it goes to seed quite rapidly, which some people think, oh, it's, it's not very long lasting, it's a bit of a problem. But what you can do, once it starts to shoot like this, or even before that, this is a fantastic vegetable. It's kind of like a spicy broccoli. Just chop that up and put it into all of your cooking. And then even these little tops, like mini broccolis, before the flower opens, totally edible. And if you keep chopping those off, it will keep throwing them up. So amazingly, this self-seeding plant that's come all of its own, you can just keep chopping and creating this abundance, and take a leaf off here, take a leaf off there, or keep throwing out leaves, keep throwing out shoots. And then, because there's so many of them in the garden, every now and then you just can't actually eat that much. It's one of those abundant plants. Again, one will get past you. And then it's got all these edible flowers on the top here. So these are all fabulous. Toss them in a salad, cook them up, they add a nice little spice. Now, every single plant, every single flower of the brassica family is edible. There is so much food. I think simply by changing our attitude, we can grow 10 times as much food in our garden. For example, carrot tops, absolutely edible. Beetroot tops are more nutritious than the beetroots themselves. So what about the pumpkin here? Now, underneath my massive things here, who eats the pumpkin leaves? A few hands, great. I was in Korea teaching permaculture many years ago, and I saw these great big leaves on the table. I thought, gosh, they look very much like pumpkin leaves, and well, they were. What they do is they steam them up. Look, I had never thought in my wildest dreams of even picking a pumpkin leaf, thinking, oh my gosh, it's a bit crusty and old and prickly, and that wouldn't feel very nice going down. But as soon as you steam it, all the little prickles go. Or you don't even need to steam it. You can just chop it up and use it like you would any bit of silver beet or spinach. Absolutely. Now the thing is, absolutely, they make fabulous gluten-free, low-carb wraps. If you've ever seen a gluten-free, low-carb wrap with all the baking, put your rice and your vegetables inside. I mean, don't we do dolmades and all other things wrapped in leaves? This is just another, excuse me, I'm still eating my mustard spinach. Dip it in a nice dipping sauce. It's wonderful. So as long as you cook it a little bit, any of those spikes go. Now, if you think about ranging through your garden, what other leaves are edible? Choco leaves are edible. What about, when you're out there harvesting your snow peas, and you've got your snow peas there. Why not take off the little tips here? That's all edible. Have you ever been to a store and you've seen little clusters of those for sale in the gourmet food section? So you can, particularly with the pumpkin, often it's one of those plants that's just ranging over everything, and we're going, oh my gosh, it's a triplet of a plant, pulling it back off trees and start to eat it. That's part of what I was saying right at the outset. One of the things we can do in terms of increasing our production and actually helping to share food beyond our own kitchens is by using this abundance. And pumpkin is one of those ones that is such a gift in that way. Now, I don't think I have planted a pumpkin in the last 10 years. I honestly, it just keeps coming back. I mean, any of you who have a compost bin, you know that it comes out of that. But this is one of the little babies. I only brought a baby because I was carrying so much stuff here from the car park. I thought I didn't want to bring one of the massive great ones. But we've been harvesting huge ones lately. And what I do is I leave a really good one in the garden. And I toss it into a corner where I know it can just rot down and then start to spread from there next year. That quite often there'll be another one that I've missed and it'll do that itself. And if you think about it, the pumpkin flesh is the perfect environment for the pumpkin seeds to sprout. We always think about pumpkin being for us, it's the food for us. But really the main purpose of a pumpkin is to nurture the seeds inside. So if you leave the whole pumpkin out in the garden and it rots down, all of the enzymes and nutrients that it needs to grow beautifully and fully will be right there in the soil. So if you need to do anything, just toss a whole pumpkin out in your garden and it will start growing. And same thing with tomatoes. I haven't planted a tomato in my garden for at least 10 years as well. And yes, it's all the cherry tomatoes, but aren't they abundant? And they don't get the fruit fly problem. I've got some trailing over the edge of my terrace at the moment, and the kids just keep going out and harvesting them and just eating them straight and then ranging up through the, you know, I actually very rarely get a snow pea. I'm amazed that this one snuck past. So much food actually doesn't get into the house. It's funny, you know, because my 8-year-old son, if I put a salad in front of him inside, and he's grown up in a permaculture garden, put a salad inside him, and he'll say no. But you let him out in the garden and he'll eat everything raw. So I don't bother trying to make salads for him anymore. I just let him go and off he goes. So that's a couple of things that you can eat straight out of your garden. Now, other things, gosh, who knows what this one is?
Kale.
Ah, this one's kale. Good guess.
Cauliflower leaf.
Close. Broccoli leaf, that's right. So broccoli leaves, cauliflower leaves, all of those are your lovely open-hearted cabbages. I don't know, I gave up a long time trying to grow closed-headed varieties of things in this climate. I got so disappointed all the time with all the bugs that got in them. And like I said before, I try and do this sort of peaceful way of gardening where I'm not spraying or I'm not trying to fight what's going on. I try and go with the flow. So I found growing open-hearted things and finding unusual and different or not so unusual things to eat. So there, you can eat your carrots, you can eat your broccolis, you can eat your cauliflower leaves, you can eat your beetroot leaves, you can eat pretty much all the brassica leaves. I wouldn't go for the tomato leaves and eggplant leaves, obviously, but that is so much food in there. Now, the other thing, you know, I love kale. I know it's been touted as a superfood, but I love it as a permaculture gardener because it's so long-lasting and it's so hardy, and it just is one of those things that you just keep grabbing a leaf off. So as I'm going out to harvest my dinner or my lunch, I go out with a basket and I grab a leaf off just about everything I walk past. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well that means that I'm collecting a bit of nutrients from here, and this one collects a different nutrient from that one, and that collects a different nutrient from this one. And so the food that I'm having at the end of that harvest range is actually far more nutritious than if I just had one food from one plant. And it also makes sure that each plant stays more healthy because I collect all the leaves before they start dying off. And if they do, that's fine. They go to the chickens or all the other systems. And I have these worm farms throughout the garden, but I also have a lot of other different sorts of composting systems, like a standard compost bin, you know, the old empty bottom ones, and I call it my compost tractor. So I load that up in the spot where I need to really replenish the soil, load it all up with a whole lot of materials from the kitchen, from the garden, wait till it goes down and the worms are up in it, then I pop off the top, spread it out and do a no-dig garden over the top of that. And then that's fantastic. Then I take the compost bin and I put it to another spot where I think I need a new fruit tree or to replenish some soil. And so I just keep moving around. There's 3 bay compost systems next to the chooks, so I take all their food scraps and all of their hay and whatever their manures and things and rake it into there and toss it over. So each section of the garden has different sorts of compost. So the more we focus on, like I was saying before, getting a lot of that material down into the soil, the better. And if you can let things just work on their own and even without any effort to. Now I'm really sorry. Comfrey doesn't like being pulled out of the ground too much to be a demonstration plant. You can see it beautifully over in the other section over there. Now Comfrey is a deep-rooted, dynamic accumulator. It has massive deep roots, reach down and get those nutrients deep down, brings them up into the top, and then as these leaves die back, they're actually adding nutrients to the top. So I tuck these underneath all of my key fruit trees up and around my inner food forest, and the plants are so healthy. And then regularly I come along and I take all the leaves off and I pop that in a big bucket, and I fill up the bucket with all the comfrey leaves and make a fabulous tea. And actually the more you rip it up, the quicker it'll break down. So you wrap that, toss that all in. Now if you have any weeds in your garden too, you can toss them all in at the same time, because the weeds are going to add and turn something that's a problem into a solution. So all the weeds break down. Any seeds that are in that get broken down as part of that liquid fertilizer too. So comfrey is fantastic as a plant carer, a plant companion. It's fantastic as a liquid fertilizer. I always grab leaves when I'm making a no-dig garden. And it's a fabulous medicine. The other day I tore my muscle in my leg. So every day I was putting on pulses. I'd crush this up into a paste and I'd strap it on all night. And it was incredible how quickly it healed. And I've heard so many stories about that. The best description of comfrey is in this book. Has anyone read this one? You can actually get it online too. So this is Isabel Shippard's Self-Sufficiency and Survival Foods. And if you go onto her website on what's it called? Herbs Are Special. You can find a fabulous, fabulous description of it. You ever say that? No, sorry. And because of what she's written, I actually eat it too. Not a whole lot, a leaf here and a leaf there. Now, in order for it to be a poisonous quantity, I think you need to have about 10,000 leaves. So, you know, a leaf here and a leaf there is absolutely not really going to hurt you at all. So, where have I got to here? Brazilian spinach. Now, this again is another one of my happy plants. This particular plant grows in a lovely mound. It's great as a rockery edge. It's one of those gap filler type plants, but not only, I shouldn't have said that because that kind of denigrates its value. It is always there. I use it as a salad green. I use it as a spinach alternative. I use it in omelettes and all different sorts of things. Now, it's all, because of the structure of its leaves, it's always standing up bright and happy. It has a shiny texture to it. So it's fabulous as an abundant plant, but also, again, it's one of those things I just snap a bit off, maybe even break. All the plants in my garden like this are so easy to propagate. I don't even have proper little secateurs. I just snap off little bits like that, and then stick that in the ground, probably up to here, and then this will start growing, and you have another one. So I have them around the edges of gardens. I have them off the edges of terraces. I have them stuck underneath fruit trees. So while I have yacons growing in between the fruit trees, tucked underneath, there'll be little things like this, because what happens is it creates a living mulch underneath fruit trees. So you're making use of all that extra space and stacking up your garden to pack in as much as possible. And what I also find, and I'm quite often taking these into libraries when I go and do talks all around in southeast Queensland, and I'm quite often finding little frogs I've taken into the garden and I have to rescue them. It's habitat. And they disappear in there into the little crevices, and because of they're like little cups, they hold the moisture, and they hold, you know, the morning mist, and they just gradually soak it down into the ground, and so they help to look after each other. And I just noticed here too that there is a display of that one. So if you'd like to take a cutting of that, there's some here, but I think they also have it, if you miss out, there's some around the corner. Another plant here in this little cup. This is Surinam spinach. This is another perennial green. It grows as a lovely bush, and each of these leaves, edible, has lovely little flowers. So instead of growing ornamental shrubs, we can grow edible shrubs. Instead of growing ornamental hedges, we can grow hedges that are edible. I have a whole array of different things like jaboticabas and grummachamas and lilipilis. There was a stall over there somewhere I noticed, grummachamas for $6 each. Hopefully there's some there. I was going to go over and get some because I think, I love the fact that grummachamas are a cherry alternative. We can't grow cherries in this climate. The grummachamas actually look like cherries. They're on a little stalk. The beautiful little berry. I bought a little sample of some just forming. This lovely glossy leaf, so it's nice as a hedge. It's dense, and then these are just little baby ones here forming. But you can see they're on a stalk, and these go bright red, deep red colour. So they're beautiful. They taste like cherries. They look like cherries. They grow beautifully here without any effort whatsoever. All you've got to do is make sure you get them before the birds. And the key thing about that is that they grow so that they come on at Christmas time as well. And there's several flushes through a year, but instead of having cherries at Christmas time, you can have these instead. So at all levels, from the ground, from underground level to the herbaceous level, to your vegetables, to the climbers and the creepers and the shrubs, there are alternatives that you can use that are edible and perennial and hardy and actually create a super abundance. Here's another little one that's a leafy green. This is the Okinawan spinach, which has this beautiful purpley colour on the other side. So that's another one that you could think about tucking in underneath a fruit tree somewhere. And I tucked into that a little bit of rocket flower just to keep it alive for a bit longer. What I wanted to say about that too is that as well as all these other self-seeding plants, rocket self-seeds out through the garden. And all of these flowers are edible too, so you can add them into the salad. And this has been one of my little favourites for a long time. This is the Cranberry Hibiscus. It's a relative of Rosella. So Rosella in my garden is pretty much frosted off. As I was walking down past the the community garden just up the hill here, I noticed there was still quite a few on, and I was tempted to go and get a sample, but I thought, no, that's probably not the right thing. In my garden, I can snap off things, but leave the community gardens things for now. But see, this is what I have for my juice every day. I'll just fill up my thing with water, and then pop in a few dried leaves of rosella. So rather than making the jams, I just keep this and top up my water all the time. So it's super high in vitamin C, and particularly in this time of the year when cold and things are going around, it really helps to build up your immune system. And I also toss in some ginger into the water as well. So this is the relative of that. Now the leaves of this are edible. So not only does it provide, you can see here some lovely coloured flowers. It's an intense, different colour in your garden than having just all the greeneries of your vegetable garden. So it provides that contrast and the beauty, but also edible leaves. And they taste just like lemon, like sorrel. Now, did you also know that the leaves of rosella are edible too? They taste just like sorrel. So there's a garden down in Rocks Riverside where they had a whole bank, a whole hedge of rosellas growing. And there's an Indian family apparently that comes there regularly just for bags of the leaves. They're not interested in the flower, which is what we normally look for, the calyx. They're looking for the leaves because there's particular dishes that need that for the flavour. So it gets quite leggy, and so you need to sort of chop it off and keep it. But every time you chop it off, plug it in somewhere else, and it's a new plant. It grows so easy. It's a short-lived perennial plant, so you do actually need to keep taking off ends and popping them in to keep it going. Whereas in my garden, the rosella is an annual. This one is a perennial. So again, another fantastically useful plant. Now, I've touched on a few different sorts of plants, but ones I haven't touched on are the edible native plants. And again, I noticed one of these over in the garden too. This would have to be my absolute favourite bush tucker plant. It's the lemon myrtle, and I'm sure many of you have it in your garden already. I planted one just straight outside my front door because I use it in pretty much everything. I use it as a tea. So I just take the lovely soft leaf at the end and pop just that much, brush it up a bit, pop it into some hot water, and it makes a beautiful, refreshing tea. A really uplifting flavour. And also, if I want to have the flavour in my drink, I can also just pop a leaf into that. I flavour yogurt with it. Last night I had some in the pumpkin soup that we cooked up, or any kind of meal that I had. Pretty much lemon myrtle goes into it. I take bunches of it when I'm going out into town. If I'm heading down to Brisbane, I'll stick it in my pocket so that as I'm out and about, you know, it's like this refreshing scent of home and an uplifting, clearing smell. Or if I'm driving back from town, I'm feeling a bit sleepy, you know, it's a sort of a spirit-lifting scent. So, as you know, those of you who are growing it, it's a really quite large tree. So in order to keep it small, I give it a haircut. And so I keep giving it a haircut. So it's just at arm's reach, because you really only want the nice young leaves anyways. There's no point in them being way up in the top and having to get a ladder to go up and get them. I do that too with kaffir lime and any other plant that I'm going to be harvesting the leaves from. And that way I can snuggle it into different corners of my garden, my vegetable garden, and have trees in and amongst vegetables. And most of my gardens are actually in ground rather than up, and I do that on purpose so that it keeps the soil really moist and really alive. I find that in my garden anyway, because I'm on the west, if I have a raised garden bed, it just heats up the soil way too much. So I find more in the ground, then I can have more opportunity for mixing trees and perennials and all different sorts of things. So when I look out from my veranda, what I see is a mix of flowers and herbs and vegetables and trees, and the bananas up the back, and the cassava leaves I can see, and along the back I can see the passion fruit going along, the chicken fence, and I've left a gap so I can actually see right up to the chicken, although I'm a bit grumpy with the chickens at the moment because my daughter brought home this lovely little rooster from the Millennium show not that long ago. Really gorgeous looking thing. Anyway, he and I don't seem to get on very well. I don't know why, because I look after it so much. And I was in there the other day with my 3-year-old son, and it came at me. Absolutely just went. It was vicious. The talons coming up, and thank God I had my slunnies on, and I kind of stuck my foot out, but it jumped over my blood rhinestone boot and grabbed onto my leg. Meanwhile, my little 3-year-old son is racing off down, terrified, down to the house. And he's seeing this rooster attacking me, tiny little thing. Anyway, I looked down as I was walking out of the chicken pen, and there was its talon stuck into my leg. So my son's decided he's going to do it like a shark's tooth and drill a little hole and have it as a... But I actually feel really sorry for the little rooster now, because I went up and had a chat with him today on my way out, and there he is, he's limping around, the poor little thing. It actually hurt him too, so I'm feeling a bit bad about that. Anyway, I think I might wrap up there. I do have 3 Good Bug Mix packets to give away to anyone who's brave enough to ask an interesting question, I suppose is how we do it, is it? Yes. And then also at the end, like I said, if there's anything up here that you'd like to come and take some cuttings from, you're very welcome. Although I better just put aside the Surinam spinach and this bucket of Brazilian spinach, because they are part of the display.
These are for sale 2 doors away.
And there's also the Northeast Street City Farm nursery up the end, and Yandina has a nursery as well. But before I do close, I did leave a little flyer on your... That's my contact details and how you can get in touch with me. There's 2 sides to it. One has my contact details. The other has the information about a course I'm running soon. If anyone wants to do a very practical permaculture course up in my garden, I take people around to all the different fabulous permaculture places in the region.